So how many of you heard about climate change and when? How many years back you heard about climate change? Is it the first time that you are hearing? No, no, the students I am asking. I am asking the students, not the elders. You heard about climate change? You read any literature on that? Any of you read any article on that? Even popular article? So what is your perception of climate change? How serious it is? How serious it is, or it can be overcome easily? Some small, huh? How worse it is? You have any idea of the seriousness? What kind of a threat it is? I don't know. It is an existential threat that is not being reflected anywhere. The governments have spent 28 meetings, international meetings, and come out with really nothing. They have not come out with any solutions to it. Because science demands. తెలుగులో మాట్లాడొచ్చా? అందరికీ తెలుగు వస్తుందా? రాదా? The slides are in English. I can speak in Telugu. పర్వాలేదంటే మాట్లాడతాను, లేదంటే ఇంగ్లీష్లోనే. I will speak in English. No problem, I can speak in English. Okay. So the problem is that it is such a serious problem. It is an emergency situation, but there is no concern. No concern anywhere at the national levels. They are continuously denying. Actually, we have known about climate change. The humanity has known about it more than 100 years ago. When Fourier first came out with the greenhouse effect, then Tyndall identified the greenhouse gases. Then Arrhenius actually calculated how much it will, the temperature of the surface of the planet will increase. That was in 1890s or sometime. But still, we have done nothing. In 1988, Professor James Hansen went before the American Congress and warned the American government that global warming is already happening, and we have to begin action. Nothing happened. In 1965, a group of scientists under the leadership of Professor Roger Rebel of Harvard University, they met President Johnson and explained to him what is happening, because they started measuring carbon dioxide concentrations at Mauna Loa in 1958. Charles David Keeling started measuring that, and in those 7 years they found monotonous increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So they said that this is not a good sign. We must begin action now. Nobody cared. Actually, after 1990 to now, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is 50% what we have released in these 30 years. So instead of taking action, we have allowed it to just increase. So we are on a collective suicide pact. What the top scientists are saying is humanity is on a drive of a collective suicide pact. It is as serious as that. Simply a few solar panels here and there is not going to solve our problem. Nobel laureates have given several statements up to now. They said we cannot continue on our current path. We need some radical fundamental changes in the way we do things. We produce things, we consume things. Everything, all our social activity has to totally change. It is not that simply that we conduct a seminar and listen about some lectures and go away. It is a threat. It is your future. Your future is not guaranteed. We have come to our final stages, but your future is not guaranteed. It is unlikely that you will enter into a career and retire like us after completing your service. Nothing. It is not going to be like that. After 2030, things are going to become far and far worse. So So I will talk on climate chaos, because what is the language you use to describe a particular problem is also very, very important. A language that doesn't really reflect the gravity of the situation is useless, because people will not appreciate what is the real problem. So why the word chaos is taken, I will explain in the next slide. Then the climate has a problem with gender, because we are talking about gender. I will talk something about it. Now, and then also it is linked to democracy. Our failure in all the COPs is because of the democratic backsliding in the world. Everywhere. Now there is a tendency of autocracy. Only person who is in the power, he is deciding everything. Democracy is forgotten. Democracy is forgotten. There is no collective decision making. There is no role for the people in the governance. That is the problem. So we have seen recent elections. How many people in Hyderabad have voted? How much percentage? Less than 50%. Is it not shameful for the people who are all educated and urbanites and who are well-off people? They don't vote and they won't demand things. How shameful it is for the urbanites. The rural people have changed the government, whereas urban people have status quo, because they are happy. They are getting their salaries, they are getting their income, they are not bothered about what is happening in the country. That's how the same climate problem is also same. We want more cars, we want to pollute more. What is happening in Delhi? What is that air pollution in Delhi is because of the automobiles on the road. We think that if you have an automobile, you have made it in life. How horribly, in European cities, historical cities, they are not allowing automobiles on many roads. Children going to primary schools are cycling and going to the schools happily on the roads. We are not ready for change. We are not ready for change. Hyderabad roads, how many is it open for pedestrians? Why is it not open for pedestrians? Why we are not protesting? Because we have lost the sense of democracy. We have lost the sense of democracy. That is the whole problem. Coming to terminology, they were using the term originally global warming. But global warming is not really reflecting the situation. It looks like something slowly, nothing. It doesn't really harm anybody. So now some newspapers like Guardian have changed that. They put that you should not use the word global warming in their reporting. They have to use global heating. Recently, United Nations Secretary General said it is global boiling that is happening. We have crossed the stage of heating also. Now we have reached the situation of boiling. Global weirding. Thinking weirding means is happening something without any control. So many people are also using the word climate crisis. More appropriate, that's considered, but that is questioned by Wolfgang Blau. He says crisis describes a temporary phenomena which has a beginning and an end. But this crisis, climate crisis, is not like that. Supposing today the entire world decides we will not burn any coal, we will not burn any oil, we will not burn any gas, we will not release any carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, the problem is not going to go away. Because the amount of carbon dioxide already in the atmosphere, which is around 422 parts per million, that is going to continue to affect us for a long time, because carbon dioxide's life in the atmosphere is thousands of years. It will not go away. Professor David Archer of Chicago University, he made a calculation, simple calculation. You travel in a car, okay, one person is driving a car alone, you put 1 gallon of petrol in it, gasoline in it, you drive around 20-30 miles on it. You know, the actual energy spent in transporting you from this place to that place using 1 gallon, that is actually used is only 2,500 kilocalories. But the carbon dioxide generated in that process, that is released into the atmosphere, in its lifetime, it will trap heat to the extent of 10 billion kilocalories. 10 billion kilocalories of heat is trapped in its lifetime. So what is going to happen? So what we are doing for pleasure immediately, it doesn't mean anything. It looks so simple. After all, I have money, I buy petrol, I burn it and go to places. But the consequences are not known. Who are burning it? Recently, This is also now, science is no longer reticent. Scientists are speaking openly. Scientists are saying rebel. There are scientists are openly coming out onto the streets and demonstrating. Why is that situation there? Because the governments are failing. Governments are not following science. This is a situation, very, very serious situation. So what Johan Rockström is one of the top Earth system scientists. Earth is not a rock. Earth is a living organism. So they have studied Earth and said Earth also operates within boundaries, within certain range of boundaries and certain parameters. They identified 9 parameters and they call them planetary boundaries. He was instrumental in that. So he says that if you go beyond 2 degrees, which we are certain to go, there is nothing like we can stop it at 1.5 or 2, that time is over. So it will lead to self-amplified warming, and also recent research that is published, a report says that at 1.5 also we have a danger that we are 5 tipping points are awaiting, and tipping point means out of control. Beyond that particular point, things will go out of control. There is nothing that anybody can do. So it looks 1.5 looks a very small number because we see temperature variation from season to season of several degrees. But it is a global average temperature. You should know the difference between normal daily temperature variation and the global average temperature variation. Okay. This is Professor David King. He was advisor to UK government. He is now retired. He is running what is called Climate Crisis Advisory Group. They conduct meetings, panel discussions for public sake, and also act as he says we have only 3 to 4 years left. 3 to 4 years left. So, but are we seeing that kind of a seriousness anywhere in our life? Is any politician in India talking about it? No. They want to continue the status quo. This is the whole problem. So this same, he said, is not visible. I think the focus is this projector is outdated, very outdated. They should change that. And yesterday, somebody they were discussing, universities are not being given money. So this is also a reflection of that. This is Professor James Hansen. He is a top scientist in climate. He is called father of climate science awareness. But what has happened? He is being handcuffed. He was arrested several times. Why should he come out of his laboratory and get arrested and go to jail? What is the necessity? Because they feel strongly about their commitment to the people. They have a moral responsibility to inform the people of the dangers that we are facing. But here in India, where is the scientific community talking about this? Nobody is talking about it. This is the most unfortunate thing. This is how. This is scientist rebellion. These are all scientists working in university and research laboratories. Why do they come out and protest on the streets? Why that in our universities, why even students are not even informed about the dangers that they are facing? No discussion anywhere, no seminars on this kind of topics anywhere. Young children, 8 years, 9 years children are questioning their presidents and prime ministers. What about my future? Young girls in Australia asked their prime minister, previous prime minister, they said, you are asking us to, they were striking every Friday. He was asking, you go to school, your place is in school, not on the streets, he told them. Then you know what they asked him? What is the use of going to school? What we study in our science class, you are rejecting. Why should we go to what future we have left with? So he has no answer. This is most of the scientists are, and then this scientist, he refuses to fly because flying from one place to another place, lot of carbon, it's highly carbon intensive. So he refuses to fly. He was working in Solomon Islands and his university has asked him to come back. He said, I will come by ship. It will take 4 to 6 weeks. So please allow me. University said no. He said, I will apply for leave. He at least gave them. They refused. He was sacked. He was sacked. This is the kind of, Even universities are not valuing science. That is the problem. So here at American Geophysical Union, these pictures are not. Peter Kalmus, a NASA scientist, and Rose Abramoff, that lady who is up there. Sorry, is it coming? Where is it? This is going. Let me go. That lady, they just held a banner for 32 seconds on the platform between two lectures. For that, she was removed from the job from Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Why are they risking that? Wow, they could do their job and jolly well go. Why are they risking their life? Because our future is in danger, severe danger. That is Professor Kevin Anderson. He's a very outspoken person, very outspoken scientist. He's an engineer, basically as an engineer, a mechanical engineer turned into a climate scientist. So he says, somebody was talking about personal changes. I'm sorry if I'm questioning. He has recently talked about it on a television and he writes about it also. Individual changes are good only towards motivating you for action, because it makes you that what you talk will have some value. Like Gandhiji said, he practiced and he spoke on issues. So for that reason, they say Gandhi, he advised a woman that he should not, her son should, a woman asked Gandhiji that please advise her son not to eat jaggery. He said he stopped eating jaggery first, then he called that boy and advised him not to eat jaggery. Like that. So you have to, when you preach, you have to practice. So he doesn't fly. He last flew in 2004. After 2004, he never flight. He had to go to Beijing. He went by train for 13 days across Europe and Asia to Beijing. He says in 13 days he wrote a paper. In return, when he came, he wrote another paper. So he has not wasted his time. But by flying, you are giving a wrong message. Today, people are flying for even half an hour flights, 20-minute flights. And one chief minister is going for 20 kilometers also on helicopter flights. This is the situation in our country. So he has written recently an article on the rich are responsible. Today's climate change, who is the responsible for this? It is 10% of the rich people in the world, among which all the university faculty also is there, and all well-employed people are included in the 10%. They are responsible for the damage to the planet. But the rest of the people are hardly contributing to the planet. Why should they die? Somebody, a laborer who is working in a farm, if he has to work during heat waves, he is certain to die. But without working, he cannot live. He cannot have the air-conditioned comfort of getting relief from the oppressive heat. So somebody is causing that heat, somebody is paying the price, health-wise, etc. Social justice issue comes. We are simply oblivious of this issue of justice, climate justice. Gender. If you say gender, women are in the forefront everywhere, not probably in India. Okay? So see, all of them are women who are saying end fossil fuels. End fossil fuels, I will give you one example in our Telugu states only. In 2010, ordinary people from rural areas, they opposed setting up of a coal-fired power plant in a wetland. They fought tooth and nail. 4 of them died in police firing, but still they have not allowed the plant to come up. They won a case in the court. In 2010, ordinary villagers understood about this problem of fossil fuels. But what about us? Everybody we discussed in urban areas, they are saying, we want power, they are opposing development. That is the argument. But today, the entire world, in COP28 also, there is a discussion about fossil fuels non-proliferation treaty. 117 countries have signed, India has refused to sign. Because all our development is now based on coal only. This is coming to women. There is lot of exclusion and a kind of injustice for women also in science. Discrimination of women in science. This is one example. American scientist, one scientist, Eunice Newton Foote, she was the first woman to actually talk about the greenhouse concentration of carbon dioxide and how it would affect greenhouse effect, and that she has done it. When she was to present a paper, she was not allowed to present the paper because she was a woman. So she had to request her colleague Joseph Henry to present paper on her behalf. So even science was not devoid of discrimination and a kind of apartheid. All of you know about Marie Curie. We talk big about her. You know how much of discrimination she faced, and yet she has won 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different sciences. Because she was a Polish woman, she was not given National Academy Fellowship in her entire life. That is the situation. So everybody, there is, in MIT and Harvard, women professors have actually protested. They went to about allotting of space to them, laboratory space to them. One professor went around and measured with a tape, measured and noted the laboratory space given to each professor, and then all of them have had to protest. Then only when somebody begins that process, then things begin to happen. Things begin to happen. Otherwise, discrimination continues. If there is no freedom of expression in the academics itself, where else there can be freedom of expression? Nothing, nowhere. This is Professor Catherine Hayhoe. She is an evangelical Christian. For a scientist to be a Christian and be very religious is normally not an accepted fact. But she uses her abilities of presentation to the evangelical Christians to convince them about climate change and accept it, because most of the Orthodox Christians say God has created the planet and only He can change the climate. So all this climate change talk is nonsense. So they don't agree. Most of the Orthodox Christians don't agree because of that. That's why Pope Francis has come out and he published an encyclical saying that we have to protect the earth. It is a duty of every Catholic Christian to protect the planet. Recently also he gave another statement. He wanted to go and address at the COP28. Because of his ill health he could not go. She has written the book Saving Us, saying she has given a positive view that how we can overcome this. The advice she gives everywhere is that first thing you have to do, even if you cannot do anything else, talk about it. Talk about it in your family, with your friends, with your relatives, everybody, in your colleges, in your universities. Talk about it. You recognize that there is a problem. Today we don't recognize that climate change is a problem. If a small thing is there, we complain and we talk. But when there is an existential threat, nobody is talking, not even murmuring. This is the problem. She is Julia K. Steinberger. She is daughter of a Nobel laureate, physics Nobel laureate, John Steinberger. And she has written a paper, A Good Life for All. All people say that if you stop using fossil fuels, if you stop using energy, we have to go back to the life of the hunter-gatherers. That is nonsense. They have done a lot of work on sustainability. They said you can live, but we have to live more frugal life than. Here also, how many people will be affected by a change? Only the rich 10% will be affected. Rest of the people will not be affected in their lifestyles. Maybe we in urbanites, having well-to-do people, may be affected. But other people, it won't make any difference for them. It won't make any difference for them. For people like us who lived in rural areas in the 50s and 60s, so we find that life was very comfortable. We have no complaints about living without electricity, living without any roads, living without tap water, nothing. In those days we could drink water anywhere without complaint. Today I challenge anybody to drink water from any river in India and not get sick. What is the state of groundwater in Hyderabad? Recently, Mahendra Tech and IIT Hyderabad, they published a paper. In that they found that in Jubilee Hills, Tarlaka, where there are no industries, there are 85 chemicals in the groundwater. Out of them, 30% are pharmaceuticals, 20% are pesticides. How those chemicals have entered into groundwater in residential areas? Because of indiscriminate pumping of effluents into the groundwater. Because that is the way to make quick profits, and our regulatory system is sick. They only want to see the GDP. They only want to see how much taxes have come. They don't know how much damage we are doing. This is unfortunate part. So here Julia, she participates in direct action in many times. She was also arrested several times because their democracies are different, not like our democracy. She is either in UK or Switzerland or another countries. That is a different thing. In many cases in UK and other European countries, when they were arrested, the judges have exonerated them and said they have not done anything wrong. They have done what is within their responsibilities as a citizens. But here will our court say? No. Another scientist, Sandra Steingraber, she is in America. She has protested against hydraulic fracturing and digging out natural gas in a latest very bad technology, very dangerous technology. When she protested, the company has filed a case that she has trespassed into their compound. And the judge asked, I will fine you $100 if you admit your guilt. She said, no, I prefer a sentence. Then she went to New York jail. Then when she was in a New York jail, other convicts, black convicts, they came to her, Madam, why are you here in jail? Then when she explained, then they brought a paper and pen and asked her to write all that in, and they sent it to the public, and it was published in newspapers, her story. It's like that. Julia says that I am not able to read well because it's very dull. So he says we can live reasonably good lives on the planet because today we are consuming 1.8 planet's resources. So I don't know how many of you really understand. You think I have money I can buy from the market. We are stealing ravenously from our future, from the future children. How many? Do you have 2 planets? Can you have 5 planets? Americans use 5 planets' resources. How long you can misuse the planet? That's why planet is dying now. Planet is losing its biocapacity to support life. What is the planet is required for? To support life. Because everything is in cycles, it cleans up air, water and everything, and then you are able to survive. If the planet is not there, what will you do? We talk about going to the moon. What will you do on the moon? The moment you step on the moon, you will die. How long you will remain in the suit? And who will supply you oxygen continuously from the earth there? This is it. The whole purpose of all these gimmicks is to divert our attention, saying that we can go elsewhere if we can destroy the planet and go elsewhere. If you retain the same logic, you will go there and destroy that also. And 21% oxygen is required for our survival. Where is 21% oxygen in anywhere in the known universe? Where is the life that is? The climate is the creation of life itself. Life creates conditions conducive for life. Without life, there is no regulation of the climate. Today we have entered, the human species has entered, and it has disturbed the climate now. We have changed the composition of atmosphere itself. Sure. This is Joella Gergis. She is a writer also. She is also one of the IPCC authors. She writes very beautiful articles, wonderfully analyzing things. So I can't read because these are all very, I just will say that she is a scientist and she is also very outspoken. They are all speak. Kate Marvel, she is also an American scientist. And all these women are threatened by the denying community of conservatives, all Trumpists and Bushites. They use such a language against these women scientists. You feel don't like uttering that language. They are going through such kind of abuse. These women are going through such kind of abuse simply because they are speaking science. You know about the live burning of Giordano Bruno? Any of you know, students? Nobody knows. This is because that is the problem with our bloody education. You are not getting education. You are getting only certificates. You are only getting certificates. Our colleges are good only in issuing certificates that make you eligible for the wage earner. You are becoming coolies, nothing else. Probably white collar coolies. This is another problem. So she writes, she is a climate scientist and means of study. My favorite planet is Earth. These are also number of scientists who are in the climate research and in the forefront. So women scientists, these are also number of them. So that climate denial, because you don't know, because it's becoming political, I have to tell you about the characteristics of science, then you can judge. Science is political. Science is not apolitical. This is not my word. This is editorials written in top scientific journals. Science and Nature. Okay? Science, because who is funding science? How the funding is given? That's why science is not apolitical, science is political. Then science is the only enterprise, human enterprise, which is self-correcting. All religions and everything, whatever is written in the book is permanent. You can't change a sentence there. If they say they talk about 6-day creation, that's all, it is 6-day creation, nothing. Earth was flat and Hiranyakashipu rolled it and put it under his armpit and he hid in the oceans. You can't change that. Is it possible that somebody can go? Where is the ocean when the earth itself is not there? So we are not allowed to use that logic, particularly in this time period. People, anybody questions any basic things are being looked out as anti-nationals and being attacked. The freedom that we had in the 60s and 70s is gone now. It is very suffocating environment we have created now. So this science denial also has become like the medieval ages now. Everywhere it is like that. When climate science started coming out, even the top oil companies, their own internal research showed that things are going out of hand. So they discontinued the research and started spending money on climate denial. What is the platforms for climate denial? TV media, newspapers. That's all. Because this is not peer-reviewed research. You can write anything in those papers. Today I am also facing in our state also, one newspaper, Telugu newspaper, is continuously writing articles promoting ethanol blending in petrol. It is not science-based. I have sent them so much of information and details, but they don't care because those articles are written on promoting an ideology, not promoting science. Okay? It's not real. First they said climate change. Who says it's not real? Somebody even in American Congress also, they said, it's cooling, where is heating? Somebody, James Inhofe, he brought a ball of ice and he threw it on the floor of the Congress and said, it is snowing everywhere. But bloody fellow, climate change means both hot and cold. Extreme weather events. It doesn't mean climate change means what is only hot all the time. So it is not us. It's not because of humans, they say. It is simply because of human activity. It has been proven now, and then it's not as bad, they say, they have been saying. We can fix it. And then now once the situation is gone out of hand, now what they are saying is we can't fix it, leave it. So it's too late now. And now the entire process of this corporate propaganda now everywhere is delay tactics. They talk about green hydrogen, blue hydrogen and all that. That's all to continue using fossil fuels and delay any action. But the recent science says we have only 7 years left before we cross the budget for 1.5 degrees centigrade. Just 7 years. Only 8% of the carbon budget is left And that is, there is no space left now. And many other scientists say even that is not there. We are only trying to be optimistic. We have already crossed the things up to 2 degrees also. It is not possible to stop the temperature, they say. So now coming to the climate science aspects of it, we should all know, because I don't know, because we are so religious and right from our childhood we are imbibed into the religious ideas. Science is studied only for the career sake. People practicing science also, they have compartments. Science is one compartment and faith is another compartment. They don't allow science to touch the faith. That's another problem. I found many of my colleagues, scientist colleagues, more vehement in defending faith than defending science itself. They never say one word defending science when it is attacked. When it is attacked. But they are very much vociferous when anything about faith issue comes. And when the earth was formed, there was 98% of carbon dioxide around the planet. How did it change? What technology changed it to only parts per million? It's a fact. This is all verifiable science, geology. They have all done the job. So much is. So how nitrogen? There was no oxygen on the planet. So oxygen on the planet was initially a pollutant. It was a pollutant because oxygen is a byproduct of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis started when earlier organisms like prokaryotes and cyanobacteria, before the single-celled organism, when they started got the ability to photosynthesize as a byproduct of carbon dioxide water reaction, they were getting oxygen. That oxygen was filling up in the atmosphere for millions and billions of years. So in the process, so many things happened in the geological era changes. There was at one time, there was 25% oxygen on the planet. Yes, it was there. They call it some era maximum, oxygen maximum. The 25 again has come down. At 21 it stabilized, and humans have started evolving only after it stabilized at 21%. Before that there were no humans. If creation is there, why creation was not there 3 billion years ago? Why creation was not there 2 billion years ago? These are all verifiable science facts. No? If we value science, and then we have to see that. Then earth balance. So energy is coming from earth. Without sun, there is nothing like life on the planet. The entire sun is the energy giver for all life, planet, life. So as all the sun comes, it is reflected on the wave and by different phenomena. And what is touching the earth as a light, the energy from the sun comes as light energy. When it touches the surface of the planet, it becomes heat, thermal energy. So earth's surface gets heated. So that heat has to be rejected back to balance, steady state. What energy comes in must go out. There should be no accumulation. So for that purpose what happens is, now if everything goes out, the surface of the temperature will be -15 to -18 degrees centigrade. So no life would be possible. And there will be no water. It will be all ice only. But it is because of the greenhouse gases that the planet is at an average temperature of 14 to 15 degrees centigrade. That has happened because this also happened only in the last Holocene period. We had a stable climate for only 11,700 years, and human civilization was possible only during this period. You go to the earliest civilizations, you go to the earliest languages. How old are they? Are they billions of years old? No. They are only just hundreds of years old, thousands of years old. Nothing beyond that. So languages are 3,000, 4,000 years maximum. In India, to qualify as an ancient language, it should be more than 2,000 years old. That is enough. So when did we do agriculture? About 8,000 to 10,000 years ago. Before that, there was no agriculture. Before there was no agriculture, there was no settled life. There was nothing like a civilization. Civilization started with people settling at one place. Civis means city, a gathering of people. When there is a big gathering of people living at one place, they have to follow certain norms so that there are no conflicts. So the civilization concept has come because when you live together, you have to follow certain norms. That is called civilization. This is, Earth has 3 planets. I don't know. This is, I think, a very hungry period for you. I am holding up. Shall I stop now? Because it can go on. The problem is when I take in Hyderabad University, it takes 3 hours minimum for a presentation on this subject. Because you can't do justice for this, because nobody reads about climate here, nobody understands the basic fundamentals of science here, because our syllabus doesn't care about it, our society doesn't care about it. Well, what is the point in talking about administrative procedures and acts and laws? Because we have to understand basically what is affecting us, what is the science behind it. Because science is the only thing that is reproducible, verifiable and repeatable. There is nothing else in a human enterprise. There is no other knowledge which has all these 3 characteristics. But how much do we value our science? We are not valuing science. So, tell me what to do, because it's already cutting 1:30. When should I stop? Because people may be hungry. What, young ladies, you will stay for another half an hour? Can I continue?
One more speaker is there before after.
This is the problem. This is the problem. See, we cannot do justice for this. Just simply conducting a seminar, just to give some lectures and go away. There is no purpose. There is no purpose. We have to be able to achieve something out of it. I don't know, even if you go outside the hall and you will forget everything what I said. It doesn't touch you. That's the whole problem now. It's a threat, life threat for us, and we are not concerned. What do we say about that kind of an attitude, psychological attitude? So these are 3 planets, Mercury, Venus and Earth. Venus and Earth are of almost similar size. Venus is slightly smaller. You can see the temperature conditions, the pressure conditions on Venus. So why is it so? Because climate has changed there. There was no life to regulate climate there. It is life that has allowed us to evolve and flourish on this planet. And we have misused that opportunity. And we are not realizing it even now. The more educated we are, we become more optimistic about technology. Unfortunately, technology is the cause for this climate change. I challenge all of you, you look at any technology and tell me this technology is benign, it doesn't cause any unintended consequences. Anybody, any technology you can tell me, this technology is good, it is all very good and there are no unintended consequences. You take our anything, automobile, it's good, comfortable, you can travel. But how much pollution it belches, how many accidents it creates, how it has disrupted the social life. Professor Richard Douthwaite of UK has written a book, The Growth Illusion, and he specifically refers to the role of automobile in the London streets, how it affected the life of the people in London. They could earlier leave their children to go to school by themselves and come. Once the automobile was introduced, a parent or somebody elder has to accompany them to the school every day morning and bring them back. Like that, earlier streets were an area of social exchange and activity. Once the automobile came, they could no longer do that. So there are so many things. Technology, there is a book called Technology and Democracy published by MIT, and he explains how technology is hierarchical, how technology is disruptive, and all. There's another big topic, of course. So, Joseph Fourier, I will speak only up to the global warming and stop, okay? I told you Fourier is a mathematician. There is Fourier series and his name on it. So he was the one first to name the greenhouse effect and talk about it in 1824. Then came John Tyndall. When John Tyndall was... Hello? ఇది ఎందుకు ఇచ్చారు నాకు వాడమనా వినపట్లేదా హలో యూ కెన్ హియర్ నౌ ఓకే గుడ్ సార్ So John Tyndall actually in 1859 he demonstrated experimentally that carbon dioxide, water vapor and ozone are greenhouse gases. He demonstrated it to the Royal Society. this is Svante Arrhenius we talked about. He calculated if we double the carbon dioxide amount in the atmosphere, what would happen? He made actual hard calculations with on paper with pen, because in those days there was no computers and no calculators. So he came out with the figures. It may increase from 1.5 degrees to 4.5 degrees. Unfortunately, he is from Sweden, a very cold country. For him, this temperature did not really mean anything. He thought for a cold country it is more comfortable if the temperature increases. And that time there was no understanding about what is a global average temperature and how it is different from a local variation. Because there was no climate science at that time. That was the problem. So this is Guy Callender. He was an engineer. He gathered data and empirically observed that atmospheric temperatures are related to carbon dioxide concentration. So he has identified the global warming effect. Now I think I will stop here because they say that there is so much, but what we can do, we have limitations here. I will stop here. Any questions I can answer for 5 minutes and then end them. Young ladies, you have no doubts. None of you have any doubts. At least begin to read. Now all of you have access to internet. There is so much being published on climate on the internet. So much. You read about it. You search for it and read about it. It is your future. You want to forget about it and you think you take it easy, then you will pay the price. You will pay the price. And we thought that we will not see the bad effects within our lifetime. But now I am certain I will see the bad effects within my lifetime. Horrible effects will be experienced even by my generation also. Because nobody is doing anything. And scientists are also saying our predictions are going outdated in no time. By the time the paper is published, you have new results. You have new results. It's getting outdated. So what? And that it doesn't concern any of us. Yes, please.
Thank you so much. अच्छा पेपर प्रेजेंट किया, एक तरह से अवेयरनेस हमें लाई। लेकिन मैं ये जानना चाहूँगी कि इसकी सॉल्यूशंस क्या हैं?
हाँ?
जो यहाँ पर आपने बताया चेंजेस के बारे में कि हम कैसे पोल्यूशन बढ़ा रहे हैं, कैसे क्लाइमेट को नुकसान पहुँचा रहे हैं, तो हम चेंज क्या कर सकते हैं इसके लिए? तो इसको सेव करने के लिए।
You want solutions?
जी।
This is the standard thing I always get. But thing is, how can there be solutions first without recognizing the danger? These solutions are not simple solutions like you will discover another technology and solve it, not like that. You need democratic action. You have to force because suppose what you can do as an individual is, you will reduce your consumption. You live simple lives like Gandhiji. But most of the things are caused because of the policies of the government. Without changing the policies, you cannot control the emissions. So how policies can be changed? By public participation and public action, climate action. When people are not ready to act, how will you change that? The first thing that is required for a solution is recognize science, accept what science is saying, and then decide collectively what is right for us to do. There are no simple solutions like I will put some solar panels, I will plant some more trees, Haritaharam. This is all bogus. Recently, a Japanese professor has written about the Green New Deal that was enacted in the United States. It's all waste. Nothing. It's very convincing arguments he has written. It is about a 10-page article. In English, we have translated it to Telugu also. We can share it with anybody. But people should understand that. It's not possible. It's beyond that. There are no simple solutions. Everywhere people ask me, why should I give solution? First, another thing also we should see. Simply by explaining the problem, you should not be left to the person who is explaining the problems to find solutions. The solution should come from the perpetrators of the problem. They should be punished. They should be penalized for causing harm to the people. You are using atmosphere as a sewer and making profits. So what is the responsibility all these fossil fuel companies are doing for releasing billions of tons into the atmosphere. That is what the European children are asking. They went to the court, in the Denmark and not in Holland, they went to the court and court said, you are responsible for the emissions because it affects the life of the people, the right to life of the people. And you know what the companies are always saying? We are only responsible for emissions from our refineries and industry, mining activity. But they are not responsible for the use. If you buy the petrol and you burn it, we are not responsible, they want to say. But they say, no, it cannot be, because you are releasing the product. The safety of the product is also your responsibility. If your product is causing harm to the society, why should you be allowed to produce? The government has to stop it. Unless the government takes action to stop all production of fossil fuels, then what do? Coming to India, we are importing 89% of all crude oil that we use in this country. Then why are we depending on crude oil? Why are we encouraging use of more and more use of petrol? What is the logic? What is the policy? And why the nation is not talking? Why no political party is talking about it? You don't have that resource. We want to import and use it. What is the burden on the nation for spending so much on import of the petroleum? Why we could move over to electric vehicles. We could stop using petrol. That would solve both the pollution problem as well as the other problems, import problems. Instead, they come out with solutions like blending with ethanol. And blending with ethanol, how do they do it? They want to produce ethanol from rice. Rice is something we eat. Poor man eats. They want rice for supplying fuel, not food. And we started the policy recently and we banned the export of rice. If we are so comfortable in producing so much rice, why have we banned export of rice? And all our children in the United States and other countries, they were saying we were not getting rice. They were on a buying spree there. So this is the problem. Now they are not allowing even broken rice to be export. This is the situation. So the policies are not debated in the country. They don't take the people into confidence. Somebody sitting in the top, he decides whatever they want, and it is not democratic. That's the whole problem. Solutions will come only when people demand it. For example, now they have removed the barricades at the Pragati Bhavan. Why did it happen? It is because of the public demand. So without demanding, nothing happens. So this is what democratic action means. And Telangana is very good for that. And you are all from here. And you are becoming, actually you are losing the old traditions of Telangana.